If you enjoy what you hear here today, please consider supporting me on my Patreon page. Every dollar helps, and you get to see content that you won't see here. Promises by Raylan Krios. Chapter 1. And I'll sleep well that night. It began as a Saturday afternoon like any other. In an effort to be a better honorary big sister to Scootaloo, Rainbow Dash had invited the orange filly over to her house to hang out and maybe get some flying pointers. She had noticed that the orange Pegasus had seemed somewhat moody and withdrawn lately, but every time Rainbow had asked if anything was bothering her, the filly had quickly responded that everything was fine. It's probably nothing, she figured. Fillies are moody sometimes. Either way, surely an afternoon hanging out with the most awesome pony in Ponyville would cheer the little filly up, right? Right. For the first hour of Scootaloo's visit, it appeared as though her hypothesis had been correct. Scootaloo was happily buzzing around Rainbow's living room on her ever-present scooter, and if one looked in through the window, they would never have guessed that anything was bothering the excited little Pegasus. That illusion quickly shattered, however, when Scootaloo took a corner too quickly and slid into an end table, causing the small reading lamp on top to fall, splintering into pieces when it hit the ground. As soon as the lamp broke, Scootaloo began to cower on the floor, curling herself into a ball and trembling frantically. Her wings twitched nervously as she looked up at Rainbow Dash from behind her tail. I'm sorry! Please no! She whimpered as she tried to shield herself with her tiny forelegs, while tears started to fall down her cheeks.
Overreaction much, Squirt? It's just a lamp. I think I picked it up for like 3 bits at a yard sale,
Rainbow said, not entirely sure what was happening. Scootaloo continued to lay curled up on the floor, her breathing rapid and shallow as she quivered behind her tail. Rainbow looked at the fearful ball of fluff that had replaced her usually bold fan. Something was clearly very wrong. She took a step towards Scootaloo, but that only elicited a terrified wail from the tiny filly. Rainbow froze where she stood and sat down on her haunches.
Okay, kid. Okay. It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you,
she said in a gentle whisper. Scootaloo peeked out from behind her tail, still whimpering quietly. Rainbow smiled warmly at her, trying to convince her that she was safe here in the Cloud House. Truthfully, Rainbow wasn't all that good with crying fillies. That was more Fluttershy's territory, or even Pinky. Hey, even Applejack and Rarity had experience with upset fillies, but for Rainbow, these were uncharted waters. Instinctively, she reached out with a wing to try and comfort Scootaloo, but at the sight of the wing moving toward her, Scootaloo retreated behind her tail and began whining again. It was the most awful sound Rainbow had ever heard. Worse than the crunch she heard when she had broken her wing, and worse than the hateful laugh of King Sombra. It was the sound of a terrified filly who should never feel anything but warm and safe, begging the universe to spare her any further pain. Rainbow winced sympathetically and drew her wing back, folding it against her side.
Hey, the wing's gone, see? It's just me.
Rainbow again tried to smile warmly. Scootaloo peeked out from behind her tail and saw Rainbow sitting there patiently, staring at her with soft eyes.
It's just me, kid. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not gonna hurt you,
Rainbow whispered quietly, not wanting to scare the little filly any further. For a few moments, Scootaloo laid there, trembling with fear, and Rainbow just sat absolutely still. Finally, Scootaloo again peeked out from behind her tail, and then the terrified filly began to sit up, her ears pinned back against her head, her eyes never leaving the larger Pegasus sitting in front of her.
Hey there, kiddo. Do you want to tell me what that was all about?
Scootaloo just stared at the ground and mumbled something unintelligible. Rainbow stayed rooted in her spot a few feet away and leaned in slightly, hoping to hear Scootaloo better.
It's nothing,
the filly repeated, louder. Rainbow kept her voice as even as possible.
Yeah, see, that wasn't nothing. Talk to me, Squirt. What's going on?
The orange filly again stared intently at the ground, her eyes darting around the room, desperate to settle on anything other than the Pegasus sitting in front of her, as her wings began to twitch nervously. She took a deep breath.
My mom's new girlfriend moved in with us a few months ago. At first it was okay, but then he started hitting me.
The admission that she was being hurt opened up a floodgate, as all of the misery and pain Scootaloo had kept bottled up for the past weeks came bursting out of her. Her eyes watering up, she clumsily stumbled into the waiting arms of her new protector. She buried her face in Rainbow Dash's impossibly soft chest fluff and began to openly weep for the first time since her tragic misfortune had started. Rainbow Dash felt herself starting to tremble with rage as she held the tiny filly. Ever since she had been a filly herself, she'd had a problem with bullies. It's why she jumped in to defend Fluttershy when they were in flight school. Why she had almost quit the opportunity of being a Wonderbolt after seeing Lightning Dust's behavior. If there was one thing that Rainbow couldn't stand, it was a bully. And the thought that some pony could possibly hurt a filly as gentle and awesome as Scootaloo, it made her blood boil.
Keep it together, Dash,
she thought. The feeling of the small filly pressed against her, clinging to her as though she was somehow capable of fixing everything, made Dash feel as powerful as Celestia herself. And all she wanted to do with that limitless power was keep the cruel world at bay. Rainbow Dash rested her head on Scootaloo's, running her hoof through the soft purple mane while the tiny filly cried out her anguish, the tears matting Rainbow's fur. After several minutes, Scootaloo, even if only slightly, started to calm down. Rainbow reached down with her wing and softly lifted Scootaloo's chin up, looking the filly in her now puffy red eyes.
I want you to listen to me very carefully. This is me, Rainbow Dash, promising you that he is not gonna hurt you again. Okay? I promise. I swear.
Scootaloo nodded meekly, but then she shook her head.
You can't help me, Rainbow. He's a captain of the Royal Guard. I tried telling Miss Cheerilee, and some stallions came over to the house, but he just talked to them and they left. He said that he'd...
Scootaloo whimpered.
That he'd kill me if I ever told any pony again.
Again, rage surged through Rainbow Dash. But for now, she pushed it down deep, telling herself that she would deal with it later. Right now, it wasn't productive.
What about your mom, Scoots? I tried telling her once too, and she never believed me. He never leaves any marks. She thought I was just making up stories.
The tiny filly began to tremble again as she flashed back to all those times in her room where she had felt helpless. But this time, instead of trying to find solace in the cold, unfeeling embrace of her pillow, she buried her head in the comforting warmth of Rainbow Dash. If nothing else, it made her feel a little better. Rainbow continued stroking Scootaloo's mane as the tiny filly pressed herself as close as possible. Rainbow could feel her tiny heart beating rapidly, and it caused an unfamiliar tightness in her chest.
All right. I want you to tell me everything you know about this creep.
Scootaloo remained still for a few moments, then nodded, rubbing her ear along Rainbow's blue fur.
His name is Lightning Strike. He moved to town a few months ago. I think he was promoted to captain in the Royal Guard.
The tiny filly said between sniffles.
A captain, huh? Well, lucky for you, I happen to know a princess. Come on, Scoots. We're gonna talk to Twilight.
Rainbow gently lowered her head and allowed Scootaloo to climb onto her back. The filly wrapped her tiny forelegs around Rainbow's neck and snuggled up against the soft, prismatic mane. Confident that her precious cargo was secure, Rainbow then left her home and flew towards Fluttershy's cottage. Normally, the trip would have only taken maybe 10 minutes, but with the filly clinging to her, Rainbow decided to fly at a more leisurely pace. While she told herself that her decision to fly slowly was for Scootaloo's benefit, she couldn't deny that a small part of her liked the feeling of the tiny Pegasus snuggled tight against her. About halfway through the journey, she heard a voice in her ear.
Aren't we going to talk to Twilight? I'm going to talk to Twilight. I need you to stay with Fluttershy for a little while.
That answer seemed to satisfy Scootaloo, and the orange Pegasus was silent for the rest of the trip. Soon, Rainbow reached the edge of the Everfree Forest, where her oldest friend made her home. Rainbow lowered her neck so that the tiny filly could climb down, and then knocked on the door. When Fluttershy opened it, she was surprised to see her friend standing there with the small orange filly hiding behind her leg.
Oh, hello, Rainbow, Scootaloo. What are you two doing here? Hey, Shy, I need a favor. I need you to watch Scootaloo for a few hours. Oh, of course, I'd be happy to, but, what's going on? I can't talk about it right now, but I promise I'll fill you in when I get a chance. Can you just watch her for me for a little bit, okay? Okay.
Rainbow knelt down and gently placed a hoof on Scootaloo's shoulder.
You're gonna stay here for a little bit while I go talk to Twilight, but I promise I'm coming back.
Scootaloo shook her head.
Please don't leave, Rainbow.
The tiny filly wailed. Rainbow Dash felt her heart snap in two at the tiny filly's request. Before she could say anything, though, Fluttershy came over and gently draped a wing around Scootaloo.
It's okay, Scootaloo. Rainbow Dash will be back soon, and while we wait for her, we can have hot chocolate, and I can tell you all about what Rainbow Dash was like when she was a filly. Does that sound like fun?
In that moment, it was clearly evident why Fluttershy was the living embodiment of kindness. Her voice was so soothing, and the concern in her eyes was so evident that even a traumatized Scootaloo knew that Fluttershy couldn't possibly hurt her any more than it could rain upwards. Scootaloo sniffled and nodded as Fluttershy gently ushered her inside.
Thanks, Shy. Look, one more thing. No matter what happens, don't let Scootaloo leave this cottage. I don't care who shows up. Scootaloo has to stay here until I get back. Got it? Rainbow, you're scaring me. What's going on? Look, I promise I'll tell you about it when I get back, but right now I need you to do this for me, okay? Okay, Rainbow. You know I'm always here for you. Great. Thanks again, Shy.
Satisfied that Scootaloo was in the safest place she could think of on short notice, Rainbow Dash sped off to Twilight's house. When she reached the library, she was not at all surprised to see Twilight through a window, curled up on the couch, reading a rather large book. As Rainbow Dash barged through the window, Twilight put her book down and regarded her friend curiously.
Rainbow? What are you doing here? Twilight, we need to talk.
For Twilight Sparkle, the hardest part about adjusting to life as a princess was that now, every pony always insisted on doing everything for her. Don't worry, Princess Twilight, your meal is on the house. Oh, I insist you go first, Your Highness. Just because she was a princess didn't mean she had forgotten how to do things. It was true that she occasionally attended state dinners where she was waited on. She worked very hard to let every pony in Ponyville know that they were not to give her special treatment just because she had a crown stuffed in her closet. But for as much as she disliked ponies treating her differently, she couldn't help but admit that her status did allow her to help her friends in ways that non-Princess Twilight wouldn't be able to do. For example, there had once been a shipment of rare silk that Rarity was expecting that was being delayed by a corrupt customs official waiting for a bribe. Student Twilight Sparkle would have been incapable of releasing the shipment, but Princess Twilight Sparkle was able to clear things up with a quick letter. Experiences such as that led to Twilight developing an uneasy relationship with her newfound power. Long ago, she had resolved never to use her status to satisfy her own desires, and she was very careful not to wield her influence capriciously. But when she did need to brandish her authority, she wanted to be able to do it well. A careful examination of influential thinkers throughout history had led her to adopt a Machiavellian attitude toward power, combined with the restraint of individuals you might know as Gandhi. If you must wield power, wield it well, and always wield it for a righteous cause. This philosophy allowed her to find balance within her new position. She didn't like throwing her weight around, but Twilight Sparkle never did anything half-flanked, and she wasn't about to start now. For a normally reserved, bookish sort of pony, Twilight Sparkle could be downright terrifying when she got angry. And a guard captain abusing a helpless filly, well, that certainly qualified as one of the few situations that could make Twilight absolutely furious. After hearing Rainbow's story, she marched directly into the barracks on the edge of town, blew the door off its hinges with a blast of magic, and demanded to see Captain Lightning Strike immediately. When she was informed that he was off duty and, most likely, at the watering hole, she refused the assistance of a messenger and insisted on heading down there personally. She then ignored any questions from the guards on duty regarding the situation and just moved on. The bar that most guards frequented on their off hours was only a few blocks away from the barracks. By the time Twilight and Rainbow got there, Twilight had calmed down to the point where she didn't feel the need to destroy another door, though that didn't stop her from kicking it open as hard as she could, however. The entire room turned to look at her as she stood in the doorway. The watering hole was not a fancy establishment, to say the least. It was sparsely decorated with a few neon bar signs and wooden tables. A dartboard hung on the back wall, scarred with errant shots from past games, and a jukebox rested near the door, though it looked like it hadn't even been used once since the bar first opened. Lightning Strike was a large stallion with a hardened physique born of years of rigorous training. His coat was jet black, with the exception of a white streak that ran down his back. His white streak also perfectly matched the color of his mane, which he kept meticulously cropped close to his head. Despite his name, his flank was marked not with a lightning bolt, but a jagged-looking longsword draped in a simple blue flag. The captain of the Ponyville barracks was currently surrounded by a group of lower-ranking officers, laughing at some anecdote their captain had just told. When the princess burst in, the captain waved a friendly greeting towards his liege lord. "Ah, welcome, your highness. What brings you to our humble establishment? Can I interest you in a cider, perhaps?" The stallion asked with a large smile on his face. Twilight ignored both the greeting and the offer.
I understand that you recently moved in with a mayor and her daughter. Is that right?
Yes, your highness. We're very happy together.
My friend Rainbow Dash has just told me that it's possible you've been abusing the filly.
Well, that's simply not true. I love her like she's my own. Rainbow Dash started to protest his denial, but was quickly silenced by a glare from the still angry princess.
Are you calling my friend, bearer of one of the 6 elements of harmony and a savior of Equestria, a liar, Captain?
No, your highness. I think she's gotten some bad information. May I ask where she heard this ugly rumor?
Scootaloo told me, you sack of horsepuck. I swear if...
Rainbow was again cut off with a glare from her friend. Ah, I see. The filly's making up stories again. I promise. I'll have a talk with her when I get home. I'm terribly sorry you had to come down here on baseless allegations. Twilight nodded at the captain, who had taken a more hostile posture than he had first adopted.
Scootaloo will be staying with Rainbow Dash while we get this sorted out. I trust that won't be a problem.
with all due respect, Your Highness, she belongs with her mother and me.
And I think it's best if she stays with Rainbow Dash. Is that going to be a problem?
Twilight asked him again with a hint of venom in her voice. Again, with all due respect, you don't have the authority to do that, the captain said as he returned the princess's glare. Twilight let out a derisive laugh at the mention of the word authority.
Oh, okay. Whose authority would you like me to get? How about that of your commanding officer? That'll be Shining Armor. I just call him Shiny because he's my brother, but oh no, let's go even further above your head. How about his wife, Cadence? Did you know she used to be my full sitter? What about Princess Luna? She could certainly order you to let Scootaloo stay at Rainbow's house. We're not related, but I did save her from Nightmare Moon, so she kind of owes me a favor.
Twilight raised a hoof and gave an expression of having an idea.
Or, better yet, we could just take this straight to the top and just ask Princess Celestia. It wouldn't be a bother at all for me, Princess Twilight Sparkle, and her former student to contact Princess Celestia and get a speedy response. So I'll ask you one more time, Captain. Is it going to be a problem if Scootaloo stays with Rainbow Dash until this mess is sorted out?
The captain of the guard seemed to know when he was beat. Not at all, Your Highness. I look forward to getting to the bottom of these hurtful lies, he said with only a trace of anger in his voice.
Good. Then we both agree there need to be some answers here.
Twilight turned and began to walk away, satisfied that she had gotten her point across. As Rainbow followed Twilight out the door, she turned to get one more look at the captain who was hurting Scootaloo. Much to her surprise, instead of being scared or chastised, he was smiling, joking with his subordinates as if nothing had even happened. All the rage she had kept bottled up began to stir, coalescing into a terrible storm that burned with a white-hot intensity. She remembered how absolutely terrified Scootaloo had looked, and contrasted it with how relaxed Lightning Streak appeared to be.
No, he doesn't get to smile like everything's okay. I'll catch up with you in a minute, Twilight. I'm just gonna use the bathroom,
Rainbow Dash said. Twilight regarded her friend with curiosity, but a stern glance from Rainbow Dash told her to just go along with it. She wasn't crazy about leaving her friend alone in a bar surrounded by hostile stallions, but she also knew enough to not doubt Rainbow Dash when she got that look in her eyes.
Okay, I'll be right outside,
she said loud enough to ensure that every pony heard her. Rainbow Dash then walked up to Lightning Strike and stood muzzle to muzzle with the large stallion.
My friends are kind and gentle ponies. I'm not. Go near Scootaloo again, and you will regret it,
she said without any emotion in her voice, but with the white-hot storm of hatred burning in her eyes. Fuck you. I ain't scared of you, little bitch, Lightning said without any trace of deference in his voice, now that the princess wasn't within earshot. Rainbow ignored his profanity and continued her emotionless decree.
The next time I see that little filly crying because you hurt her, I will make you pay for it. And trust me when I say, no matter what happens to you, no matter what I do to you, I'll sleep well that night. I've stared down changelings, I've stared down dragons and gods. You think you're special because you're a captain? You're not. And I want you to remember that the next time you even look at Scootaloo.
Lightning Strike wasn't entirely sure what to make of this Pegasus staring at him with such vitriol. He didn't believe her, but he didn't doubt that she believed herself, and that on its own was dangerous enough. Instead of responding, he merely met her gaze with his own. The two locked eyes for a second, each one fully aware of the hatred the other felt. After a moment, Rainbow huffed and walked out of the bar, where she found Twilight waiting for her.
What do we do now?
The Scion Pegasus asked.
You go get Scootaloo, and I'll write FPS first thing in the morning. Right now, that's all we can do. All right. Thanks, Twilight. You're a good friend. Also, you were really awesome back there. Remind me never to get on your bad side. No pony messes with my friends,
Twilight said, as she affectionately nuzzled the Pegasus next to her. Since there was nothing else to be done for now, the two friends promised to meet up tomorrow, and Rainbow raced back to Fluttershy's cottage. When she got there, she found Scootaloo curled up in Fluttershy's lap, sleeping peacefully as the larger Pegasus gently stroked her mane. Tiny neighs of contentment slipped out past the filly's lips, and for a moment, Rainbow Dash forgot about the pain of earlier in the day. Fluttershy gently waved to her friend as she entered, neither of them wanting to wake the sleeping filly. Rainbow Dash sat across from her friend, a wary look set upon her face as she let the day's troubles finally catch up to her. Fluttershy broke the silence first with a soft whisper.
Rainbow, you know I love you, and you know I would do anything for you. But I've never seen any pony as frightened as Scootaloo was when you brought her here. So, as your friend, I'm asking you, please, tell me what's going on. She's being abused, Fluttershy. I brought her here because I needed to drop her off someplace safe, and I couldn't think of somewhere safe for a scared filly than with you, and then I went to Twilight because it turns out the creep who's doing this is a captain in the guard, and I don't know what I'm doing here, Shy. I'm flying blind.
Rainbow sat on the verge of breaking into tears herself.
Oh, the poor little thing. I wish I could help, but I don't know what else you can do. I do know one thing, though. I know you won't let anything bad happen to her. How can you possibly know that, Shy? Well, she loves you, Dash, and I know you. You love her too. You're just too scared to admit it.